Hello, everyone. I'm sharing a story that hit me hard, and if it resonates with you, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. My name is Clara, and at 32, I was walking down the corridor toward the spare bedroom when I noticed the study door slightly ajar. My father's voice drifted through the gap, steady and resolute. Your sister's worth nothing. She's finished. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. Then came Nathan's hesitant, almost regretful response. I stood rooted to the spot, my heart pounding in my chest. From where I stood, I could just see the outline of my mother's shoulder as she lingered near the window. Richard was sorting papers at his desk. Nathan slouched on the couch, but it was Sylvia who first caught my gaze. Her eyes locked onto mine through the slim opening. Instead of guilt or surprise, she gave a faint, knowing smile, as if she'd expected me to overhear. That smile cut deeper than the words themselves. It confirmed every fear I'd buried, revealing that my role in this family had been silently redefined. My worth had been evaluated and discarded, all without my input. I retreated into the shadows, memories of ignored achievements and brushed off praise crashing together into one piercing truth. The house felt colder, despite the fire glowing in the fireplace. Every framed portrait on the wall seemed to highlight whose presence had always been prioritized. By the time I reached the guest room, my hand shook so fiercely I could hardly shut the door. I sank onto the bed's edge, staring at the plain floral quilt. Laughter from downstairs floated up, as if nothing had shattered. But something had broken, and I knew sleep would elude me that night. If you've ever felt betrayed by those who should have championed you, drop a comment with where you're watching from. Sleep evaded me, and my mind instead traced back through years, piecing together childhood moments that now clicked into painful clarity. Nathan was always the one in the spotlight. When he reached the debate finals in his junior year, my parents booked flights across the country without a second thought. That same week, I'd earned a spot in the state math competition. I went alone with my teacher, sent off with a polite smile, and a reminder that Nathan needed their support more. "You'll manage," my mother would say. Her voice soft but final, as if independence was my default rather than something forced upon me by their neglect. I learned early that recognition was a scarce commodity, rarely extended to me. The one exception was my grandmother, Ellen. She lived in a cozy craftsman bungalow across town, her home scented with lavender and aged books. On weekends, she'd spread bank statements across her kitchen table, guiding me through the intricacies of compound interest and savings bonds. "Financial independence is liberty," she'd say, her voice firm, her gaze sharper than most realized. While Nathan found those visits dull and often skipped them, I soaked up every lesson. When she passed during my senior year, she left me $15,000, designated for my education in her will. I noticed the fleeting look my parents exchanged, a hint of tension in their faces. Later, my mother commented lightly, "Your grandmother always preferred you," turning her gift into a point of contention. That inheritance became my escape, though it was framed as an unfair advantage. Nathan got tuition, housing, and endless allowances. I stretched Ellen's gift across scholarships and part-time jobs, navigating margins so tight they left marks. Lying awake in the guest room now, I saw that Ellen had given me more than money. She'd equipped me with tools my parents never meant for me to wield, the ability to stand on my own. Pressing my hands against the quilt, I realized those lessons were now my only shield, as the family I'd once claimed had just declared me worthless. Northwestern was the first place I felt both unseen and liberated. Unseen because the Albright name meant nothing there. Liberated because I could define myself by my own merits, not by a role assigned at the family table. Ellen's inheritance covered my first year's tuition and books. After that, I pieced it together: scholarships, library work study, tutoring calculus on weekends. I learned to count every dollar twice, not from fear, but from pride. Back home, Nathan chose USC, with my parents footing the entire bill, justifying it with words that still echoed, "He needs the right setting to thrive." His setting was a beachside apartment and a new car in the driveway. Mine was a dorm with chipped paint, dining hall shifts, and secondhand textbooks bought and resold. After graduating, I moved to Chicago, landing a job at a financial consulting firm. My 700 square foot apartment in Lincoln Park was mine alone. Every piece of refinished secondhand furniture felt like a statement. I built my life step by step. My emergency fund grew gradually, then consistently. Retirement savings followed, and soon a portfolio that surpassed some of my senior colleagues. But duty lingered. Every month, I sent $500 back to Portland, starting during what my father called a brief dip in his construction business. I saw it as my contribution, proof I still belonged to the family. Even after the business recovered, the transfers continued without question. I viewed it as obligation, as if my independence required a tether to them. Tonight, in the guest room, with my parents' words still ringing, I saw it differently. The money I'd sent wasn't just duty, it was fuel for a system that now declared me valueless. Thanksgiving dinner was supposed to be a celebration, but in our family, it always felt like a performance. The table sparkled with crystal and polished silver, every detail orchestrated by my mother. I'd practiced how I'd share that Michael had proposed, how the ring was simple and thoughtfully chosen. I waited for the right moment, but before I could finish, Nathan cleared his throat and dove into his latest startup pitch. My father leaned in, eyes bright, asking about market potential and investors. My mother rested her hand on Nathan's, beaming with pride, as if the meal was a tribute to his ambition. When I tried again, quietly mentioning my engagement, my words fell flat. Sylvia glanced at me, her lips curving into that familiar, faint smile that said she'd heard me, but deemed it unimportant. The conversation swung back to Nathan, my news disappearing like a fork slipped under the table. Later, as the house settled into quiet, I passed the study again. The door was ajar. Richard's voice was clear and unwavering. The business, the house, the trust, it's all set for Nathan. She doesn't need it. My heart pounded against my ribs. Through the narrow gap, I saw Nathan nod, uneasy but silent. My mother stood by the window, her reflection in the glass. She turned, saw me, and met my gaze without surprise, offering that same knowing smile from dinner before looking away, as if my exclusion was always part of the plan. I slipped back into the hallway, her smile burning hotter than my father's words, already knowing I couldn't let the night pass without exposing every account they'd hidden. The house was dark except for the faint glow in the guest room, where I sat with my laptop on my knees. I should have been asleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's smile, that silent erasure. Instead of rest, I opened the folders I'd brought across the country. Meticulous records of bank transfers, account summaries, scanned receipts. At first, I told myself I was just skimming to calm my mind. But as hours passed, the numbers told a story louder than any holiday toast. Line after line showed $500 monthly transfers stretching back nearly 7 years, $42,000 sent faithfully to a family account I now knew wasn't about temporary struggles. I scrolled further and stopped cold at another entry. $8,000 withdrawn from Ellen's inheritance, funneled into Nathan's failed app launch, disguised as a family investment. No one had asked me. No one had repaid me. Then came the deeper betrayal, loan documents for my father's company, my name listed as guarantor, my credit and stability used without my consent. I recalled signing insurance papers one Christmas, unaware of what was slipped in. The realization chilled me more than the November breeze leaking through the window. I began typing, page after page, cataloging not just the money but the moments, the championship I attended alone, the scholarships I clawed for, the dinners where Nathan's ideas overshadowed my every milestone. 7 pages in total, a ledger of a lifetime's imbalance. It wasn't for them, it was for me. Proof I hadn't imagined it, evidence to counter the denials I knew were coming. By dawn, my hands ached from typing, but my mind was sharp. I'd balanced the books, and the tally was final. All that remained was to present it. As dawn broke over the hills, I'd already brewed a pot of coffee. The ritual grounded me, careful scoops, the machine's hum, the rich aroma filling the quiet kitchen. I placed 4 mugs on the dining table, one for each of us, and set the folders beside them like place settings for an unwanted feast. Richard appeared first, drawn by the scent. His gaze shifted from the mugs to my face, then to the stack of papers. He sensed this wasn't an ordinary breakfast. Without waiting for him to speak, I motioned to his chair. Sit. We have things to discuss. Sylvia entered next, pristine in her morning attire, a faint whiff of perfume following her. Nathan shuffled in last, hair tousled, rubbing sleep from his eyes. They sat, confused but cautious. I slid a folder to each. Inside is a full account of every dollar I've sent this family since moving to Chicago. $42,000 in transfers, $8,000 taken from Ellen's inheritance, and fraudulent loan signed in my name. Read them. Richard turned a page, his jaw clenching. This isn't necessary, he said. Business is complex. Families support each other. Support doesn't include fraud, I replied, my voice calm, the tone I used in meetings. Sylvia reached for her mug, her fingers trembling slightly. Clara, you're overreacting. We've always backed you in our own way. Think of all we've done, your education, your opportunities. My education came from scholarships and jobs. My opportunities I built myself. What you've done is drain my resources while saying I'm worthless. Nathan sat silent, staring at the papers, lips parted but wordless. I let the evidence fill the quiet. Finally, I stood, pushing my chair back. I'm done. No more transfers. No more guarantees. I won't fund a family that erases me. The room seemed to shrink, the polished table too small to hold us. Richard's eyes narrowed. Sylvia's face paled. Nathan's grip tightened on the folder. I left the words hanging, already bracing for what came next. Nathan broke the silence first, his voice rough with disbelief. Clara, you've got it wrong. Dad didn't mean you were excluded. It's complicated. You're making it sound worse than it is. I met his gaze. Did I get it wrong when I worked nights at the library while you got a car at 16? Or when I paid my way through Northwestern while Mom and Dad covered your USC tuition? Or when I sent $500 a month from my salary while you lived rent-free in their apartment? His face paled, his mouth opening then closing, no words fast enough to counter the truth. I leaned in. That app you boasted about, the one that tanked in months, know where part of the funding came from. $8,000 from Ellen's inheritance, meant for my education, used for your project without my consent or repayment. The papers in his hands shook as he scanned my records. For the first time, he looked less like the golden child and more like someone waking from a crafted illusion. He turned to our parents, voice rising. Is this true? You used her money for my business? You've been taking her transfers all these years. Sylvia began to respond, her tone smoothing into reason, but Richard's sharp look silenced her. That glance confirmed what Nathan was starting to grasp. His shoulders slumped, confusion shifting to shame. For the first time, I saw the strings that had propped him up, and I watched him realize they'd been pulled by the same hands that had bound me. The room felt different, as if the script had slipped from their grasp, and Nathan was left staring at the pages, unsure whether to keep reading or set them down. After the confrontation, the house felt suffocating, every polished surface reflecting a version of myself I no longer knew. I returned to the guest room and began packing, my movements swift and practiced, like preparing for a work trip. But this time, I knew I wouldn't return. On my laptop, I canceled every link to the family accounts. The automatic transfers stopped with a few clicks, and I notified my bank to block future payments. Then came the harder steps, freezing my credit reports, securing the identity my father had exploited. My firm's legal team responded within the hour to my secure email, confirming they'd addressed the fraudulent guarantees tied to my name. With each action, the ties unraveled until only their shadows remained. My suitcase was ready by the door before dawn. I'd changed my flight to Boston, where a senior role awaited, a promotion, but also a fresh start in a city where no one knew me as Richard and Sylvia's daughter, where my work stood on its own. Before leaving, I pulled out the one item I'd carried all these years, the brass key to Ellen's bungalow. It no longer fit any lock, but it had always symbolized safety. I stopped at a shop near the airport and had a single word engraved on its worn surface: boundaries. As I boarded the plane, the key rested warm in my hand, a final inheritance, not of wealth, but of meaning. As the plane lifted off from Portland, I knew my life was no longer collateral for anyone else's debts. Months later, Sylvia's email arrived, heavy with nostalgia, weaving memories of childhood into pleas for reconciliation. She recalled past holidays, meals crafted, sacrifices claimed, each line laced with guilt. I read it twice, then replied with 3 sentences: confirmation of receipt, assurance I was fine, and a note that future contact should be limited to necessary documentation. Richard reached out soon after, his tone all business. He named me as a trusted consultant in letters to his partners, as if my name could restore his lost credibility. I forwarded each request to my firm's general line, offering him only the automated courtesy given to any client. The boundary was firm, and I held it. Nathan's call came later, tentative. He didn't hide behind excuses. He admitted he'd leaned on their support without questioning its source, accepting the advantages as natural. I thought I needed them, he said softly, but I think I just didn't know how to stand on my own. His voice carried no demands, only awareness. For the first time, I believed he might learn to bear his own weight. In Boston, I built something Ellen would have recognized. I created a scholarship in her name, dedicated to teaching young women in Oregon the lessons she once shared at her kitchen table. Applications flooded my inbox, students eager to learn budgeting, credit, independence. Each story reminded me that her legacy was never the money, but the knowledge she gave freely. The past still tugged at me sometimes, but it no longer shaped my ledger. I was investing in futures that saw value where mine had been overlooked, preparing for the day I'd hang Ellen's key on my own wall. My Boston apartment overlooked the Charles River, the water gleaming gold in the late afternoon light. Above my desk hung a simple frame, holding the brass key Ellen had given me. The engraving, Boundaries, caught the light faintly. It was more than a keepsake. It was a guide, a reminder that the locks I chose mattered more than the doors shut against me. When Michael and I married, the ceremony was intimate, held in a hall with windows opening to the harbor. Friends and colleagues stood with us, people who knew me for my work, not as someone's daughter. Nathan attended alone, his suit slightly ill-fitting, his demeanor quiet. He offered us soft congratulations, no defense for those who stayed away. That silence was its own reckoning. Richard and Sylvia's absence didn't diminish the day. It confirmed what I'd learned. Family isn't defined by blood or shared meals, but by those who value you without expecting repayment. Ellen had understood that long before I did. She planted it in me, and I carried it to this city, to this life I built without their framework. In the evenings, I sometimes sit beneath the frame, my gaze resting on the key. It no longer unlocks Ellen's bungalow, but it opens something greater, freedom earned, dignity reclaimed, love chosen, not owed. As I look out over the river, I know the future beyond my door is one I'll open on my own terms.